Welcome, everybody, to our first ever webinar for Macedon Technologies. This is definitely a very exciting moment for us because we are very much looking forward to putting on a number of these over time. But the first one that we are going to do is focusing around dynamic workforce management. And so as you have questions, we do have a questions list that you can submit them, and then we'll go through the presentation, and at the end of it, we can go through and answer them. But the first thing that I would like to do is just introduce the panelists. So first, my name is Colin Schoenfelder. I am the Director of Technology with Macedon Technologies. And I oversee our Center of Excellence, which is all of our architects and our in-house experts in Appian that really set our best practices. And then also our in-house solution development. So at Macedon, we use Appian very regularly within our own business, but then also as we see different things that we want to develop as accelerators for our prospective clients, we can develop those solutions out as well. And dynamic workforce management is one of them. But then next we have Kenny Rosenburg, so I'll allow you to introduce yourself, Kenny.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. As it says there, I'm a project leader here at Macedon Technologies. To us, that means that I partner with our clients, with our team, and learn as much as possible about their business and solve some of their most difficult problems. As it also says, I have extensive financial services experience. For the last several years, I've been embedded in a full-service bank, doing a variety of different tasks. Most recently, the rapid development of loan processing for small business administration paycheck protection program. Quite the experience there. But yeah, that's why we're here today.
Great, thank you. And then finally, Victor Lee, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Thanks, Colin. So my name is Victor. I'm a principal consultant with Macedon Technologies. I have over 3 years of experience working on solutions for the banking industry, 2 of which actually involve dynamic workforce management. And so I've seen the types of concepts that deliver the most business value to managers working with dynamic workforce management. So I can't wait to speak more about those.
Great, thank you. And so before we get started with the actual demonstration of the solution, I just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction about who we are at Macedon Technologies. So we are practitioners that specialize in Appian-centric solutions. And actually, we just this month had our 11th anniversary. But when I say Appian-centric solutions, we primarily focus around building out applications and custom software using the Appian platform. And I'll go into that a little bit later. But over the 11 years that we have been in business, we have worked with over 100 clients and produced over 450 engagements. Now, one of the nice things about working with a platform like Appian is that we're not focused on a particular industry vertical. We're not focused on a particular industry. We really get to see a big breadth of different solutions that any company might need. And as we are working through those different projects and engagements, we start to see patterns. And some of those patterns are across any industry. So we can build out different solutions or accelerators that we see will allow people to focus within those engagements or within those different solutions. But then also, in some cases, we see things that are industry specific that we will see come up a number of times. And so this is one of the solutions that we are talking about in the latter category. And so now I'd like to pass it over to Kenny, who's going to give us a little bit more context into how we arrived at the dynamic workforce management solution in particular. So Ken.
Sure. Thank you for that. I'm just going to share right here. So as Colin mentioned, we're going to talk about dynamic workforce management. So I just want to give a quick overview of what that is and why you would care about it. Your business might have dozens to thousands of employees to manage, and dynamic workforce management is about how you respond to the natural fluctuations of your business and fill your team's days with the highest value tasks. Under the pressure of day-to-day operations and constant uncertainty, how do you make sure that your resources are allocated properly, and how are you confident in those decisions? Today, specifically, we're going to be looking at a particular use case. As I mentioned, I have quite a bit of experience in the financial sector, and that leads to a pretty great example of this in its use case. So the examples we're going to give are about that sector, but you can extrapolate this out to your business as well. So here we go. What are the things that we care about when we're talking about dynamic workforce management? Your business has a lot of complexity. When it comes to financial services, there's no shortage of obstacles. You have a very wide breadth of products and services, an extremely high volume of employees and clientele. You have quite a number of regulations to worry about as well. These are constantly changing, and they have very nuanced details that are difficult to keep track of, and they require a lot of reporting and oversight. And as we've seen in the last couple of years, there's a lot at stake to getting these right. And at the end of the day, you're working in a customer service industry. You have your own clientele to worry about, and making sure that every time they transact using your bank. So what are some of the major factors that we want to consider when we're addressing these concerns and making sure that our workforce is allocated appropriately? And then who can own the responsibility of doing that allocation? So from the top level, you have your executive group that has a bird's eye view of your business. Ultimate responsibility falls to them, and they're going to have some pretty high level concerns about subjects like these. So unexpected spikes in work, they're difficult to predict and even more difficult to hire for. What are you doing with your workforce to prepare for when the floodgates are about to open? And what can you do to prepare when there's a drought? We just saw a great example of this with the recent SBA PPP volumes that came in and literally took down a couple other systems. And what are you doing to make sure that your business won't suffer similar consequences? Low throughput is a big one. Even when you think you've made the right choices and your output is lacking, how can you identify the bottlenecks in your company and make sure that you can resolve those in a timely manner? And as I mentioned, you're in a customer service industry. So your net promoter score is a great calculation of that. It has a lot of factors that feed into it, but one of the biggest ones is making sure that clients come back to you every time. So executives, you're going to be having these concerns, but you're going to have to offload that to your management team. It has their own level of concerns. They are going to be responsible for actually divvying up the work and assigning it out to the workforce. And how are they doing this with confidence, like I said? They need to be able to identify their top performers, and then hopefully they can seek out and find what they're doing differently and use that as a teaching tool for the rest of the team. That's the type of accountability that we're looking for. The managers are accountable to the executive branch, but also to making sure that their employees are in a satisfactory work environment. Being assigned work that you're unable to do consistently leads to high worker attrition, and you want to make sure that you're keeping your strong performers around. And to mention those performers, we're talking about auditors in this case, but you can extrapolate this out to any type of task worker, loan underwriters, loan processors, or even outside of the financial sector, anyone that has a skill set that you're going to want to make sure is assigned to an appropriate task. And all of this work is going to fall on their shoulders. So we want to make sure that they're being given reasonable expectations and that those are backed by data. We would like for your auditor team to be able to track their own performance against themselves at previous times, but also against their coworkers to make sure that they're keeping up. And then, as I mentioned, in the worst case situation, people are being assigned tasks that they're either incapable of doing or don't know how to do. And that's obviously something we'd like to avoid. So these are just a few of the considerations when we're talking about dynamic workforce management. But that's not even to talk about vacations and sick leave, forgetfulness, and even how are you tracking this? How are you making sure you're not losing the communications about what is expected of people? So as we navigate forward in this, I'd like you to keep these in mind. But the next thing that we're going to do is pass this over to my colleague, Victor, who will do a demonstration of a solution that we built on the Appian platform.
All right, thank you, Kenny. So as I mentioned, I've worked on a couple of solutions for the banking industry that involve dynamic workforce management. And I'd like to talk to some of the themes that I've noticed throughout those solutions that we'll be noticing throughout the presentation today. Meeting SLAs. So the top priority is always to meet our service level agreements. Hands-off efficient work allocation that will free up managers and other supervisors to do more valuable work. And providing enough knowledge and awareness so that business users can make informed decisions. So with that, I'll dive into what a manager will see and work with in our solution. So here's my manager dashboard. And when I sign in as a manager, I want to quickly orient myself to how things are looking in my queue. So at the top, we have some high level numbers here for loans completed, loans in progress, and loans that we haven't started on yet. I see a graph of trends here to see what our throughput, my team's throughput has looked like throughout the week, but I can also change the time frame that we're viewing here. And by filtering on auditors here, I can get a closer look at what the throughput has looked like on a per resource basis. And I can filter on multiple auditors and turn this into a comparison tool. We also provide some insight into how often each resource has been meeting their the SLAs as the time frame progressed. And so what I have here is flexibility in what kind of data I'm looking at, who I'm viewing it for, and the time frame that I'm looking at. Now, as I mentioned before, knowledge and awareness is what will drive informed decision making. And so starting with the users utilization graph down here, this will be a nice stepping stone into the next part of the presentation. So the goal here is to meet target utilization across all of my proficiencies. And so we want to avoid being underutilized or overutilized in order to comfortably meet SLAs in all of our areas of work. So I see here that some rebalancing is going to be needed. And before I go into how we'll fix that, how we'll rebalance these columns, I'll talk about some of the terminologies that we'll see on the next screen. So we'll see functional area, which refers to a work stream. And in our case, we're going to look specifically at loan auditing. Proficiencies, which are domains within a functional area. And for us, that's going to represent different funding stages. And then task types, which are categories of work within a proficiency. And in our case, this is going to refer to loan products. So navigating over to update workload, we'll see here under my allocate resources tab, what is a way for me to control what kind of work my resources are going to be able to work on. Now, I'm able to adjust skill settings here, these task types under proficiencies, and this is going to affect two things. It'll affect what kind of work I'm able to assign to each resource based off of what task types they currently have. And it's going to affect what type of work the system's going to feed to their queues as they pick up more work on their own, which we'll see a little bit later. So adjusting these figures, these settings, is going to have huge effects on my throughput. So how am I going to make the best decisions as to how to actually configure these? This is where my allocation details table up here is going to come into play. So what we have is a matrix that shows within each proficiency and task type actuals versus ideals of full-time equivalents. And so we want to meet our ideals, so, since that's what the system recognizes as a recommendation for us to comfortably meet SLAs. We have different tiers of deviations from those ideal numbers. So we have a neutral font that shows that we're doing pretty good, and we have things set up to where we'll be most likely to meet our SLAs. Bolded where we're deviated slightly, but might still be manageable. And then reds, which definitely require our attention. So I'll walk through a problem-solving example here, looking under direct pre-funding. So I can see from this matrix that I need more resources on auto loans, and I'm a little bit over-allocated on marine. So what I can do here is do some swapping. Maybe I'll change out marine for auto, for Gary, and similarly for a couple of other resources. So we're already out of the red here, but I can take us comfortably more towards the ideal. So now I fixed two issues, the deviation from auto and the deviation off of marine. So I'll go ahead and save this. And what we saw there was an example of me doing some swaps, doing some deletion. There's countless different ways where we could solve that problem. And I could go about doing that myself, or I could let the system do it for me. We have a couple of other reds here, and I'll do an auto rebalance so that the system can fix that for me with its best recommendations. So here we have a major convenience with the auto rebalancing, but I'm of course able to have finer control if I decide to do the adjustments myself. Now, the task types down here are just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to setting up work assignments. We have productivity profiles as well. So my auditors are rated on skill ratings between 1 and 5 within each proficiency. And so this is a great way for me to identify my top performers. Now, this is going to rate them based off of how long they've been processing these types of loans, how many loans they've processed within each proficiency, how long they've taken to work each type of loan. Now, I also have the ability to override these ratings if I feel the need to. So for example, let's say that Karen Anderson here, I know that she's one of my senior resources and she's great at processing direct pre-funding, but she's been pulled into more readings recently, and so her rating's taken a hit. So I'll bump her back up to a 5 so that the system knows to allocate appropriately for her and give preference to her if there's a pressing SLA that I need her to work on a loan for. All right, so we've seen how work is going to be allocated. Let's take a look at what the actual work appears as. So navigating over to my task dashboard, I have a view of everything in one place. I can choose to view my open loans or my completed loans. And I have various filters here to hone in on exactly the types of things that I want to see. Now, let's say that we have an approaching deadline here, and one of my resources has indicated to me that they are going to be taking time off and they won't be able to meet that SLA. I have the ability to reassign this work to somebody else. Now, the system can make its best recommendations using the auto assignment feature here, or using manual assignment. I'm given insight into the different metrics that the system takes into consideration when it does this type of auto assignment. So I see my eligible auditors here based off of the task settings that we saw before. And going into a particular resource, I can see some additional information. So I can see the types of loans that Gary's working right now. I can see his different proficiencies, his task settings, and upcoming time off. Now, what we've seen is data pulled in from multiple different areas here. So Appian, being data agnostic, is able to pull in loans from an external system, which is how we populated our queue, giving us the loan product, the client name, the loan amount, and that type of information. And here under upcoming time off, we're sourcing this from Workday, but we can easily pull from other types of systems like Best Fit or Paylocity. So pulling information from different systems and having it all work together in one place and being able to see it in one dashboard offers me a tremendous value as a manager. Now, I touched on time off. Now, how can I make best decisions about whether to approve various time off requests? So this is where my forecasting tool can come into play. Now, I can set a goal for the year. Say last year my team did 270,000 loans, and this year I want to exceed that by 10,000. So I can also see on the left here, contributing to these numbers, figures from months that have already elapsed in the year, the number of loans that we've completed, and the amount of time that we've completed them within SLA. And we've got future months which have figures projected using historical data, but I can override these numbers. So for example, in November, I'm expecting a slightly higher volume than the previous year. And I want to bump up my SLA percentage because I'm planning to onboard an additional resource for a loan type that we've traditionally struggled with at this time of year. And so this all helps to paint visuals on the right within these graphs so that I can plan out my year accordingly when it comes to approving time off, when it comes to deciding to hire additional resources and train additional resources. And so overall, I can be more proactive instead of reactive when it comes to planning out my year. So from the manager's perspective, we see how I'm controlling my work queue. I'll change over to the auditor, the worker perspective, and then see how they handle things at a day-to-day level. So let me start off by looking at the My Statistics tab. So similar to a manager, it helps me as an auditor to quickly orient myself using high-level numbers. So I can see how my queue is looking for today, how much work I've got overdue, due today, total in queue. I have a scorecard here where I can view how I'm progressing against my weekly quota and compare against my peers as well, or change things to a monthly view. And then under goals, we have smart goal setting, where we have measurable, attainable goals that we can set, and then the system can automatically track these and mark them as completed once I've met that goal, past that threshold. And so overall here within this snapshot, I get a sense of where I am for the day, what my priorities are, and I have a sense of progression. Now, moving over to the actual task, you see a lot of similarities with what we saw from the manager's perspective. So like them, I can view open or closed loans. I can filter on what I want to see specifically, and then my actual task down below. Now, there is the slight difference of not having an assignee filter and not having an assignee column down here, because as an auditor, I only want to see what's relevant to me, what's in my queue. And so we have reusable components, and this is a great advantage of our design and of Appian in general, where I can speed up the delivery of different features by reusing components, but also having the ability to customize and tailor the experience depending on who's looking at what. Now, down below, I have a Get Next Loan button, and this is going to have the system feed one additional task into my queue. And this is going to be based off of eligibility, productivity rating, those types of things that we saw previously when working as a manager. And so using Get Next Loan, I'm able to take on work at my own pace. I'm never going to feel overwhelmed because I'll only pick up loans if I'm researching for another one, or if I've completed my other loans. I know that the type of work that the system's going to feed into my queue is going to be work that I'm capable of doing, that I'll be most comfortable working within SLA deadline. And from a manager's perspective, this is going to offer a lot of value because it solves the problem of cherry picking. And so I'm not going to have auditors grabbing loans from queue that are easier to work and then neglecting the more difficult ones that have maybe more pressing SLAs. All right, so we've seen the interplay between manager skill settings and then how that work actually routes into auditor queues. Now, as an executive, how am I going to measure the value of this type of solution, and how am I going to get a feel for our overall throughput as a team? So on a manager's dashboard, we again see some components lifted and reused between the manager's dashboard auditor throughput report as well. So similarly, we have some high-level numbers here of loans completed, in progress, and not started, along with a graph, a visual for how the throughputs look throughout the year. We have the all-important Net Promoter Score, which is my primary way of measuring value of this type of solution. So this number is being sourced from an external system that collects customer survey results, and I even see how my NPS has trended over time. Now, with this type of solution, I'm expecting to meet SLAs more consistently. And so with that, we would expect consistent Net Promoter Score, or even better, to trend upwards. And below, we see a view similar to what we saw on the manager's dashboard. So this, instead of showing auditors, is going to show managers. And like with the managers, I can filter on specific managers and turn this into a comparison tool, or just a more in-depth look of their individual performances. And I know who to get in touch with if I see some alarming metrics here. So now that we've seen how this type of solution looks and functions across different user roles, I'd like to revisit the themes that I've touched on before. So we've seen in this type of solution how we more consistently meet SLAs, how the system provides various ways for hands-off efficient work allocation using auto rebalancing that we saw when updating workloads. We see how Get Next is going to deliver work one at a time into an auditor's queue. And we see how if managers decide to take action on their own, the system is going to provide enough information for them to make informed decisions. So I hope you enjoyed the look at our solution. I'm going to pass things back to Colin, who can talk more about Appian in general.
Great. Thank you very much, Victor. Yeah, so I see that there are a number of questions that have come through the presentation so far. But before I get to that, I did want to kind of switch back and just give a little bit more context onto the platform on which this was built. So Appian is a digital transformation platform, but it is really a software and a platform which is used to develop custom software and custom software applications. And you can use it for a number of different things, but I kind of break it up into three different categories. So first is, like I just said, so building new applications. It can build different applications like the Dynamic Workforce Manager, like any other kind of business application that you might need to accomplish your work within your environment. And it does so 25 times faster than doing traditional development. It accomplishes that by being low code. So not only do you have some advantages of the fact that you can build once, deploy anywhere. So build one application, and then you can view it from tablets, you can view it from mobile, you can view it from a desktop. Any place that you're going to be completing your business, it is viewable anywhere. But then also by the fact that Appian builds out a lot of custom components and a lot of pre-built configurations that are targeted towards the kinds of applications that they are going to develop, which really allows you to accelerate your time to market way faster than using traditional development. But you want to try and avoid, as you're creating custom software applications, creating different silos. It's very easy to have one piece of software which is handled one specific part of the business that doesn't speak with another type of software that you have, and you inevitably wind up with a number of different solutions that doesn't really give you the ability to see a full picture of what is going on. To start to combat that, Appian has invested a lot of time and energy into being as easy to integrate with as possible. So Appian can connect with any of the different systems that you have in your environment, be them legacy systems that might have existed for a long period of time and don't have any easy way to integrate with them. Or a more contemporary software that might be very service oriented and it deliberately makes itself very easy to integrate with, like Appian. So it's very easy for it to integrate with other systems, and then as an extension of that, to build a layer on top of all of those systems so that you can have one place with which to manage all of your work and complete all of your work. So that if you are a user who is trying to come into a system, you can go into one platform and see all of the different workflows that you might have to do, interact with all of the different systems that you need to, but within the blanket of just one unified interface. And so taking a look at what something like that might look like, you can see a dashboard here. And in this case, we are showing an example where we have some Appian data across the top, which is showing the status of different workflows that we have in our system. We have reports over there on the left, which is pulling in information from external systems and just displaying it embedded here so that you can get context into what's going on in all parts of your business. On the top right, you can see different actions that you're going to take either within Appian workflows or even taking actions that might integrate with other systems in order to initiate workflows in them. So you can get one big view of everything that is happening in your environment. But so what kinds of applications are we talking about here? What kinds of applications can it be developed within Appian? Well, I definitely want to stress that this is custom software development. So you can really use it for any type of software that you might need to be able to develop. But a couple of things to highlight. So BPM, digital process automation, case management, RPA. Those are consistently rated very highly for Appian by Gartner and Forrester research, and is something which is very much the bread and butter of this platform. But I do want to stress again that this is something that you can really use for custom development, and any type of business application that you're going to use is something that can be developed from within Appian. And with that, I will move over to questions. So thank you very much for joining. I see that there are a number of questions over here. I'm going to kind of read through them and go through one at a time. And I'll reference back to you, Kenny and Victor, for we have ones that are specific to the solution. Some of them seem to be a little bit more broad questions. But the first one that we have is, so how quickly can this application be modified to support a different use case, like for managing underwriters instead of auditors? So I guess I'll harp back to, again, this is something which is, custom software. So this is a solution that we developed in-house in Macedon, not for a particular client. So just to kind of give context around the fact that this was something that we built and can be customized to whatever the use case is. However, I guess, Kenny or Victor, do you want to take answering, how much it might take to kind of lift this into something which would be a little bit or a slightly different use case?
Sure, I can go ahead. So in our specific case, we work with loan auditing, but the way that we broke things down based off of that inverted pyramid hierarchy, we had functional area, proficiency, and task type, right? Now, we can easily translate that over to a different use case. Say, for example, KYC due diligence, where the proficiency types are instead deposit and loan, and then each of those have their own products like checking, savings, consumer credit card, and so on. And so using what we've built here kind of as a base framework, we can easily translate over to different use cases.
Great, thank you. So the second question that we have, how quickly can an application like this be installed and turned on? So this solution is something which is completely encapsulated. So if you are already an Appian customer, this would be something that we would, be able to work with you and, figure out exactly how we needed to get it installed onto your system, and then, work through, what it would take to get rollout and set up and everything. But it's intended to be something which can be, delivered and returned value on very quickly. If you are not yet an Appian customer, then that would definitely be something that we can reach out to you about and, get started with the onboarding process and talk to you through, what you can do with Appian more broadly, in addition to just, this solution. Great. The next question that we have, how does Appian manage to show data from multiple systems and multiple vendors? So I believe, as Victor mentioned in there, one of the things that we were doing as part of this one is pulling in time off from another system like Workday. And like I mentioned when I was talking about, more just about Appian generally, Appian is something that has a lot of ability to integrate with any number of systems. So it can be something which is, very traditional and very, contemporary integration, like we are, integrating via web services and, pulling in data from that. Or if you have different legacy services or legacy systems which may be more difficult to integrate with, we can reach into, directly into database if it's appropriate, do different kind of data syncs using like Excel, imports, or even now things like, using RPA, now that Appian has Appian RPA built into the base product in order to integrate with systems that are particularly difficult to integrate with. So there's really a lot of different ways that we can integrate with other systems in order to pull things into Appian, and it's definitely one of the core competencies of the platform. So the next one, how customizable are the screens? So, I think that that's another thing which is from a base product. This is something that we built up from the ground up, and again, is something that, we would be able to customize to however we wanted to for your particular business. If it was just sort of the workflow that was something that was helpful for you, and you wanted to try and get your custom branding on it, you wanted to get your custom products on it, you wanted to configure it so it was something that was going to be a little bit more targeted towards your use case, that would absolutely be something that we would be able to work with you through in order to accomplish. So Appian is very, very customizable for what we developed, and everything that you've seen here was something that was built out from the ground up, in the platform by the solutions team. Let's see. How have you seen this solution be applied to other industries and verticals? So maybe I'll throw that one over to start to Kenny. But first I'll just kind of comment that, really dynamic workforce management, just as a concept, right, isn't something which is specific to this industry. And for sure, being able to manage queues of tasks amongst multiple people is something that we are doing all the time with our Appian workflows. Just thinking off the top of my head, we have different systems of like sales management queues where we have a different like requests that come in, and we have a sales team in different regions that need to, have triage between among a number of different requests that are coming in, or even in like manufacturing and engineering, if we have engineering teams that need to, distribute work amongst them. This is something which is a very, very common problem to be solved with Appian, just sort of the dynamic workforce, and is definitely a very contemporary problem with most workforces working from home now. But I guess, Kenny, I'm not sure if you have anything more to add to that, or if there's anything else, any other industry.
Yeah. So you gave a few good examples. I know we've seen this in use with mortgage lenders, which is sort of financial services adjacent. But like you said, it's not hard to imagine this applying in other cases. The foundation of what we've built is any business that relies on skill sets and task management, this is going to be useful for. So you can see how this would apply for maybe a call center or some sort of quality assurance that needs to be done, and just making sure that individual pieces of work are being distributed in the best way possible.
Great. Cool. Thank you. So the next question is, what does this look like on mobile? So like I mentioned when I was talking about just Appian as a platform, one of the big advantages with going with Appian is the fact that you have this concept of deploy one, or build once, deploy anywhere. So what that really comes down to is when we're building out these different screens within Appian, you can build, a designer can build them in one place, but then they can be rendered on any of the different platform. So all of the screens that you saw here would be able to be focused, or it would be able to be displayed on native mobile apps for iOS or Android. I don't think that the mobile the mobile part of this was something that we were really focusing on, but it would definitely be something that maybe we could, sync up with and show you in the later features. Victor, I don't know if you have any comments on that and just sort of like using this in mobile.
No, you're correct. The mobile experience wasn't something that we particularly focused on for this solution. But if there were mobile-specific considerations, then yes, I'm sure that we could talk through what that would look like based on specific requirements.
Okay, great. All right, the next question. So is this solution hosted on the cloud? So yes, I guess what we are looking at today, this is a solution which is hosted on the cloud. However, this is a encapsulated solution which can be deployed on any Appian installation. So many Appian customers are Appian cloud customers, and so this would be something that we would be able to install on a cloud environment. However, especially like in the financial services industry, there is still a lot of request for on-premise Appian installations so that they can access different internal networks, and especially like connecting to different data sources which might be internal and have sensitive information. So if you have an on-premise installation of Appian, then definitely this is something that we would be able to install on there, and just kind of go through the configuration with that. So the next question is, what kind of AI is being leveraged to help predict resource allocation to match the workload? So I can comment on AI a little bit more broadly. First, I guess, Victor, if you want to talk a little bit more about, I guess, what it's using in order to predict workload for different users.
Right. In our case, this was a custom written algorithm. And at a basic level, it checks eligibility based off of the different task types that have been set up for each auditor within each proficiency, and then goes down into preferences based off of a work item's SLA and a worker's productivity rating.
Okay, great. And then I suppose just to kind of talk a little bit to AI more generally. So definitely Appian is another place that they have been investing heavily over the course of the last couple of years into their ability to really have pre-built components for the places where you are using AI very frequently. So things like sentiment analysis, things like OCR and document extraction. Those are things which now have pre-built connectors in the Appian environment. And not only that, but also abstracts away your need to have, a number of different, people that you need to contract with. So like, Google Cloud for Vision or Amazon services for AI, that can all be encapsulated in your base Appian contract so that you don't have to have a number of different systems that you're integrating with. But this is something that Appian has really been investing with a lot over the course of the last couple of years, and we're really happy with the things that we've seen in the last few releases with document extraction and being able to integrate that very cleanly with the rest of your applications. So very exciting times for Appian and AI. The next question is about data. Where does Appian store the data? Is it storing it within Appian? Um, so this is another one where I guess I would mention coming back to where we can pull data from and its ability to integrate. So as part of this solution, any Appian installation on the cloud comes with a MySQL database already installed with it, and I would suspect, although I'm not positive, that all of the data that we're showing here was coming back from that relational data store in the cloud. However, we would be able to configure any data source to either via, just like a direct database connection, or if we had a web service that we wanted to integrate with to pull back and push data, that would be something that we'd be able to set up as well. So really, wherever you have your data housed, Appian is going to be able to integrate it with it and pull it in. And I feel pretty confident with that statement because of the fact that Appian has tons of ability to integrate, and it's one of the main features of it. And then finally, the last question: what is the expected ROI for a solution like this? So with regard to, I guess, the ROI for like a specific organization, I would say that would be probably a little bit flexible depending on exactly what you are going for. A solution like this, though, I think that the different areas that you would see, return on investment, for sure in just the effective management of your workforce and making sure that you're getting the most out of the people that you have and getting the most out of the training that you have done. And especially when we have distributed workforces, it's really important that they can have one shared queue where you can have anybody come in and the person with the right skill set is able to take the job or take the task or whatever the piece of work that they are most able to do. Kenny, I'm not sure if you have any other kind of thoughts on just the places where you would get return on investment from.
Right. Yeah. So in addition to just better management of your workforce and getting the most out of your employees, it helps a lot with your hiring plans. It's easy to see in Victor's demo. There's the grid that shows you when you're far away from your highest quality FTEs. And if you're seeing regularly that it's difficult for the system to account for that, you're going to want to hire more. And you can use the forecasting tools to anticipate spikes and hire in advance. So you're able to behave a lot less reactively and plan forward. So that's another key point. We've also taken some extra steps to make sure that this tool has things like performance tracking built into it. So it serves a dual purpose and maybe adds an application to your toolbox that you didn't already have. Those are just a couple other points to consider. Like you said, it'll be specific to any business's use case and can obviously be expanded as well.
Great. Thank you very much. And that is the final question that we have. So thank you all very much again for joining our webinar. Just a quick plug, we plan on coming out with more of these over time, and the next one that we have planned is for next month. We are going to be talking about Agile and delivery, and just making sure that you are able to get the most out of your delivery process with Appian through effective Agile and development. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you then.